Russian streets gave me all what I have, all my skills. Winner of this fight, really like pound to pound best, why not? Why not?
This is Boombox, and these are the stories we are tracking for you today.
I think that the euro is severely undervalued.
At the highest output in over 3 years. What the Fed really wants is inflation.
The U.S. has more than doubled imports from Iraq.
All that debt that was accumulated, they have to pay it off.
And when you see oil go down, where economy goes down.
What do you make of that data, and what does it really mean for the average worker?
Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. To mind you, we're discussing Trump's amazing victory. Okay, I want to go back to Gilbert before we went to the break. We're talking about how the media dealt with this election, and maybe how they're going to deal with President-elect and then President Trump.
Right. Well, let's look at mainstream media. Let's look at the newspapers of record. I have in mind particularly the Washington Post, which has been most the really cheerleader for the Clinton campaign. What I've detected in the last couple of weeks has been a change, not in the editorial policy. The editorials, the op-ed articles have been consistently, or almost consistently, pro-Clinton. However, the amount of coverage, the columns given to the Trump campaign and to what has actually happened out in the field has changed dramatically. When they felt that they could ridicule Trump, that he had no chance of getting to the White House, they gave him very little coverage. It has been virtually even, and they've even mentioned that at a Trump rally in one of these battleground states, Trump had 35,000 enthusiastic supporters, and 30 miles away, Clinton was gathered barely 5. These facts have been presented. So journalism was allowed to perform its function.
Yeah, but you weren't seeing this on the. I'm sorry, you weren't seeing this on the mainstream, because when some of the mainstreams, when the TV networks, when they're bringing with their cameras, and it came to a Hillary Clinton rally. The way the camera angles were played was that you couldn't actually see how small the crowds really were.
What's really interesting is that, what happened here is that, again, the voters were watching this mainstream media, particularly CNN and MSNBC.
They were voting against it. Were they believing it?
But see, that's my point, Rory. And I think the viewers felt insulted because they're insulting their common sense. I got sick and tired of, the type of people that go to a Trump rally. I watched a lot of the pictures. They look like people I knew when I was growing up. Okay?
Okay, I'm going to disagree with Dr. Gilbert. I think that President Trump, I can say that now, President Trump is going to be at war with the media establishment in the U.S. for the next 4 years. I think Twitter is a wonderful tool for detecting the groupthink and the mentality behind the journalists. I very much encourage you to follow all of these Western mainstream journalists on Twitter to see their interactions, the way they think amongst each other. And they are in rage and tears right now. And they are an ideological class. They are a liberal ideological class of praxis, forcing their view on the world, and they are not going to sit down and take this.
When you talk about forcing their view on the world, though, can we just bring up the issue of American exceptionalism here? Because I want to know, what does a Trump presidency mean for foreign policy?
Realpolitik.
Yeah, I think we'll have a much more of a realist approach here. I mean, it doesn't mean it's going to be a rosy relationship with Russia. I don't assume that. Anyone that does should actually read everything that Trump and his people have said. But we won't be in this type of new Cold War or even close to a hot war that Hillary Clinton was threatening the world with.
I think definitely with Trump, we will see a more realist take, something we haven't seen in U.S. foreign policy in 30 years, since the end of the Soviet Union, or at least since the end of George H.W. Bush's presidency. We are going to see what Trump has spoken directly against is the euphemism of democracy promotion. He has spoken very specifically about
regime
change.
Right.
And he considers it wasteful and counterproductive on an economic sense and on a political sense. And I think we're going to see an end to this combative relationship with great powers.
South China Sea? I mean, will America keep sending its ships into the South China Sea?
Trump has had a very negative stance towards China, but I think that perhaps Trump can do better business with China in the end
Being a
than
businessman.
Clinton.
Okay. I think the basis is an issue. He didn't spell this out, but I think you have to follow the dots. He's spoken about beefing up the U.S. military to make it great again, is adding to the servicemen, adding to the ships that we build, adding to our improving our nuclear capability. All that costs a lot of money. What he hasn't said is where that money is going to come from, and I would like to make a bet on where it's going to come from, at the expense of withdrawing from some of these 600 bases that are costing the United States.
Leaner and meaner.
They're taking $600 billion a year. Zhirinovsky on a talk show here a couple of weeks ago said, hey, wait a minute, we're not as inferior to the United States military might as it would appear, because the United States is spending so much of its military budget on toilet paper and sausages.
Yeah, but also the Russian military is designed for military purposes, whereas the American military is designed for profit. And there's a big difference.
For projecting political change here.
For hegemony.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is what could very well change.
It's the entire time that Barack Obama has been in office, has that been repudiated now? We have, I mean, for Americans, Obamacare, that is a very, very important issue. Having not lived in the United States during those years, I can't really speak to that there. But
Trump
Gilbert,
said
is
just
this a
cancel?
repudiation of everything
That's what he's
Obama?
going to do.
I believe it is. And Obama himself described a possible Trump victory in those terms. I think he summarized it perfectly. Both his domestic policy was a failure, except for Obamacare, which has come under
Which is a failure for a lot of
which
people.
has come under severe criticism because of the premiums rising, and the foreign policy achievements were nil to negative.
Well, I mean, Hugo Chavez said some years ago that when Obama was coming into the White House, that there was a lot of hope. Yet change, yes, we can. And Hugo Chavez said we had hoped that Obama would choose to lead instead of live, but he chose to live instead of lead. Now, one of my questions is, will Trump be allowed to be Trump in the White House?
It's an interesting thing here because we got that phrase from Ronald Reagan. Will Ronald Reagan be Reagan? And he certainly was Reagan. Watching Trump during this campaign, in the very beginning, he stumbled a lot. And to see someone in a year and a half get up to speed, I mean, he was in his stride in the last week, in his stride as a candidate.
Reagan
And he
means
spoke
ruling.
presidentially.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
was
that
really
is,
amazing.
you know that.
The thing is that
I think God loves these puns.
because he has an entire establishment still in place. He has a Republican Party that is in crisis. The Civil War in the Republican Party starts now.
Now, that administration is going to be decapitated. I think you have to look at people 2-3 levels down from the present. But having said that, we have to consider how we got to the mess we're in today. And I take that back to 2002, 2003. The foreign policy establishment, the intelligence establishment of the United States was decapitated by Dick Cheney. They had a vast purge going on. So if Trump is going to take back control of these key sides of the executive power, he has to remove the top people, all of whom are being fed by hand-fed by
You're
by
saying that
Obama.
Trump will be able to drain the swamp, as he's been saying, because I don't think he
Just
can.
a moment.
All right, come on, you guys. He won an incredible victory. Let's give him that. Take the next step in January.
You have to look at his definition of who he is and what he can do. I think his definition has been very laid back in a Reagan sense. He has taken a directional position. He, as the president, he is going to give new directions, new marching orders, and he has, to a great extent, the ability to pull that off, even irrespective of relationship with Congress.
But he's going to be, from my sense of it, he is going to be a domestic policy president, and this is what people are expecting from him. We can talk a lot about foreign policy, but the average American is worried about home.
Okay, so domestically, Trump is going to come in
I'm
with
not
the
worried.
Republican
He knows
Party,
how to run
nominally
health
his
chain.
party, holding both houses of Congress. But he is going to, having won the election, he is now going to have to go to war to win his own party and for his domestic agenda. On foreign policy, we all know that the neocons and the flip side, they're opposites.
Will they come back to the Republican Party?
The liberal interventionists flocked to Clinton. But a lot of Trump's foreign policy advisors are also neocons, right? But just B-grade ones,
Yeah,
right?
That's what one prophet was told.
They're going to try to push him in a lot of directions.
PC spirit.
And Trump is going to have to pick and choose his battles on foreign policy. I think it's very interesting to watch is going to be the relationship between the U.S. and the EU now. I think we're going to see a repeat of the Bush years when the EU is going to recoil
like
from
Daddy
Trump's
Burbucks, isn't he?
character. And I think that Europe
You know how
is
he
going
acts
to
in
face
Annie's,
further
gets
disintegration,
the right
further
thing done
weakening,
without
and
being
possibly improve relations with Russia as a result.
Okay, but I think that will be more on a rhetorical level. I mean, unfortunately for the Europeans, there are
The Europeans have three major elections coming up. In 2017, there's the French, the German, and the Dutch. These are decisive powers within the EU structure and how it sets policy. I think the continued dominance of Merkel in Europe is finished. And this was the nail in her coffin. The question is, how are the populist movements going to find expression? Are they going to be extremist? As some people tell us, are they going to be moving towards the center and acting as parties of power?
Could we
which
see
is more
President
likely.
Le Pen in France?
I don't think so, but I think we will see.
I didn't think Brexit or Trump.
Okay, gentlemen, we've got a minute and a half here. What is Hillary Clinton's concession speech going to consist of?
Honestly, guys, I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to get comfortable with a big thing of popcorn and a few drinks over
Oh,
here.
just
I
sit
don't know what she's
there.
going to say, but I'm going to relish every moment. I'm sorry.
I must have known what he was about to say.
Lots of popcorn then.
She's long vacation to work on her memoirs. And I wish her well.
She's going to need lawyers. She's going to need
I
lawyers.
wish her well in retirement and looking after her grandchildren.
I am going to sup on the tears of the U.S. foreign policy blob. I'm going to relish them. I'm going to tell them how delicious they are, and I'm going to enjoy the restoration of realism in whatever slight degree to American foreign policy.
30 seconds, Gilbert. If you were an advisor to Donald Trump on the first day of office, what would you suggest him to do?
Open up the airwaves, open up the discussion of these foreign policy and domestic issues to continued real debate. He has been so important in making the whole lot of us credible in the United States, as we deserve to be, because we are at least half of the country.
I think, Matt, Donald, take a break. You've done good, kid.
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm shift. Well, as we talked about, it's the second Brexit of the year. Maybe we'll see it in France next year. All right, gentlemen, we've run out of time. Many thanks to my guests here in Moscow, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.
Agree.
Oh, looks like a Trump victory. Oh, I can smell it. Oh, it's going to be glorious. Oh, it's fantastic. A lot of data. You know, we live in the age of big data. Everyone looks at big data, and everyone was wrong.
Okay, see you later.